My daughter-in-law shouted through my own door, "Why is that old leech here? We don't have space, and the house I paid for went quiet on me." I felt the sting, but 60-plus years taught me to breathe, stand straight, and choose facts over fury. I took a time-stamped photo of the lock, noted the witnesses, and walked away to let records and only records do the talking. That was just the first move. The real story starts when a courthouse number, a calm deputy, and a stack of proof step into the picture. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Salt air always smells like Sunday morning. To me, coffee on the porch, a gull heckling the trash can, my house key warm in my palm. Only this morning there was no key, just the glossy motorized deadbolt Darren installed for convenience. I rolled my overnight bag up the steps and tapped the code I've known by heart for years. The screen blinked red. Access denied. I didn't panic. I breathed. I took a quick photo of the keypad with the porch clock in frame, the kind of picture that tells the truth without raising its voice. The seawall hummed with traffic. Somewhere down the block, a radio murmured a weather report about heat and tide. This was my house. It had always known me. From inside, a chair scraped. Then Callista's voice cut through the morning like a cold knife. "Why is that old leech here? We don't have space." Pots clattered, music jumped louder, and laughter pressed against the windows as if the glass belonged to it. I didn't answer her. I raised my phone again and took another photo because humiliation evaporates, but records stay. A gull barked. My geraniums along the steps were soil-splashed and trampled in places I never step. I noted it in my small notebook porch, left 2 pots damaged fingerprints of barbecue sauce on the railing. Just the facts. Arthur, my neighbor, rounded the corner with his terrier and stopped at the bottom of my walk. He touched the brim of his cap in a half-greeting and looked past me toward the kitchen window where silhouettes jittered against the blinds. A car door thumped across the street. Curtains parted, then stilled. The block had heard enough to pretend it hadn't. I knocked once. Firm, not pleading. Darren slid across the hallway like a commuter who'd taken the wrong platform, eyes down, phone in his hand, thumb busy. He saw me then, let his gaze slip away as if eye contact might set off a sprinkler system. "It's my home. I need to get in," I said level. He opened his mouth, closed it, and vanished into the kitchen light. I stood with the patients I used to stand with at pediatric appointments that ran an hour late. Another photo, the brass nameplate I had screwed to the jamb myself, Eleonora Shaw, taken the week the paint dried. I logged the time and the weather, 82 light breeze from the Gulf, and the 3 unfamiliar cars in my driveway. A white crossover, a dented pickup with a temporary tag, a sedan with beach stickers that weren't mine. Memory tried to lift the latch. The day I signed the mortgage. The afternoon I chose those kitchen tiles because the cross breeze would kiss them dry. How on good days the house exhaled cinnamon after a bake and salt after a storm. Inside now, a playlist too loud for morning, a child pinging a soccer ball against a pot, someone laughing the laugh people use when they want to be heard. I tried the code again. Access denied. I pressed my palm flat to the door like I used to press a fevered forehead as if I could soothe it into recognizing me. No use. I lowered my hand and felt the anger settle where it could do work. I would collect proof, not bruises. Arthur cleared his throat softly. "Mrs. Shaw," he said. I heard what she said. "If you ever need me to put something in writing, I will." His terrier sat at attention like a tiny bailiff. I wrote his name and number carefully beneath today's date and thanked him for fairness that simple civic grace neighbors still give one another when the world forgets itself. From the kitchen, a pan scraped metal and somebody turned the music again, like a child twisting a dial to erase a parent's voice. Darren's shadow crossed the hall and paused, then shifted back. He could have opened the door. He didn't. Silence can be an alibi. It can also be a signature. I took a wide shot of the facade for my front arrival album, then a close-up of the porch camera lens so I'd remember to request the footage. I photographed the tire marks in the crushed shell along my curb and the smear where a cooler had been dragged. Each image sat calmly on the screen, a small square refusal to be rewritten. Once more, I knocked. Once more, no answer. "I'm leaving now," I said to the door, not to the people behind it. "I'll return for my things with proper records." The wind shifted and brought a ribbon of smoke from a grill sweet and wrong in the morning. My bag rattled down the steps behind me like an old friend who still had my back. At the sidewalk, Arthur lifted his phone. "Text me so I have your number," he said. We exchanged a brief message. Chain of custody begins in small, boring ways. A timestamp, a saved thread, a neighbor who'll tell the truth when asked. I paused at the curb and looked once more at the house I built out of pay stubs and patient plans. A gull tilted like a paper airplane into the sky. The seawall glittered. The door could forget me today. The records would not. I turned toward the car, toward the bank, the HOA office, and the attorney whose card had rested in my wallet for years like a spare key. If a door won't remember, you teach it your name in another language paper. I set my jaw and started walking. At the corner, I took one last picture, the street sign and my mailbox number in the same frame. Gatehouse logs could show when those cars rolled in. The HOA email would show if Callista requested a code change, if she requested it at all. Paper has a way of finding daylight. So do women my age who know the long math of staying. I do. If the door won't remember me, the records will. I thought that as I stood on the walk, but the chance to look inside arrived first. The patio slider whispered open to let heat out a teenager back through with a cooler, and his sneaker held the screen just long enough. I stepped 3 paces into my own dining room. No announcement, no welcome, just salt air lifting napkins and the shock of being a guest in a house with my name on the deed. The table was dressed for 10. Place cards looped in looping script circled the runner I never bought. Taped to a ladder-back chair was a cardboard sign, "Family Only." Ink bled at the corners. I scanned the cards. Callista. At the head, Darren to her right. Kids, in-laws, a cousin who still calls me ma'am when he wants favors. My name wasn't there. Near the patio door, a lonely folding chair sat without a napkin or silverware. I set my phone to silent and took a clean, time-stamped photo of the sign, then of the empty chair with the wall clock in view. The pinch landed under my ribs, familiar as a bill due. I kept my face plain. Paper doesn't need me to cry to remember what it saw. Callista breezed in, wearing my embroidered apron plating store-bought salads like a woman auditioning. "Please keep the owner's countertops clean," she told a cousin, and the room rewarded her with polite laughter. Owners. The word bent. I felt it hook under my skin. Eyes slid past me as if I were a package on the wrong porch. Artifacts of my life had been moved as if I were moving out. The wedding photo of Darren and his father lay face down on the side console. The jar of shells I'd collected was swept into a grocery sack for crafts. The hurricane quilt was folded once and jammed into a cloudy plastic tote. A geranium pot wore a white scuff and spilled a fan of soil on the wood. I photographed each piece-frame tote pot and filed the images to a new album. Darren paused in the doorway and met my eyes before choosing safe ground. "We're tight on space, Mom. It's just for the weekend." "A house has room when respect does," I answered. I said it once, even as if handing back a key he'd forgotten. I didn't argue. I mapped the seating with another photo and let the silence say what he didn't. A new voice bubbled behind me. "First family brunch at our beach place." Zinnia chirped to a phone mounted on a gimbal, the screen tossing hearts. She adjusted my apron bow on her sister's back as if tying her name to it. I caught her screen's reflection in the patio glass with the family-only sign crisp beside it, then a wide shot of the table and the empty chair by the door. Wet towels slumped over my new wicker. Sunscreen streaked pale along the arms. A pair of teenage cleats rested on my bay window seat above the basket of paperbacks. Harmless in one breath, heavy in many. I paired the wicker photo with the sealed quilt tote so the contrast could do the speaking, what we care for, what they don't. "Everyone grab a seat," Callista called, tapping a spoon to her glass. A cousin nudged the sign half an inch closer to me, a joke pitched for the room. I didn't touch it. I rolled my shoulders back and dated an index card dining arrangement, no place setting. Sign photographed. I slipped it into my pocket the way I slid graded papers into stacks. In the hall, the closet door failed to shut. A manila folder showed from beneath a beach tote tabs, sharp with words that didn't belong near sunblock medical notary letter. I didn't touch it. I let my eyes memorize the order of tabs and the angle of the stack, then went. If the table wouldn't seat me, the house would tell me why it had let them in, just not yet. Back in the dining room, Darren chose a chair that kept him between me and the head of the table. "It's complicated," he said softly. "What's complicated is forgetting who kept the lights on while you learn to be generous," I replied level. He looked at the sign instead of me, as if cardboard could speak. Zinnia's lens drifted toward my bookshelf. Our beach place has the coziest reading nook, she cooed, cropping the cleats out with a practiced thumb. "Family only today." The comments fizzed. I angled my phone once more to catch her reflected pose with my apron and the sign, then pocketed it. "The internet can dress a room, it can't change a deed." Callista lifted her glass. "We're so grateful to gather," she said, smiling the tight smile of someone already planning the next thing. "Let's keep messes off the owner's counters, okay?" The room made a noise halfway between a laugh and a cough. I stayed where I was, 3 paces inside, no scene, no pleading for later stories. When plates finally kissed the table, I stepped toward the hall. "I'll be back." I told Darren, my eyes on the small scar on his chin from a childhood fall. For my things and for clarity. He nodded without looking. In my notebook, I wrote one sentence in plain teacher script: "If they rewrite the picture, I will keep the proof." At the slider, I backed up the photos and sent the timestamps to myself. The Gulf light flooded the room bright enough to show dust motes. Behind me, the laughter belonged to another house. The sign still faced the table. The folding chair waited near the door, and the closet held its breath for what comes next. I breathed, counted, and chose the quiet road. If the table won't seat me, the house will tell me why it let them in. I stepped away from the dining table, the cardboard family-only sign still glaring at me, even as laughter spiked behind my back. Phones hovered everywhere, little glowing eyes turning my home into a stage. I kept my face steady and tracked who pointed, who filmed, who pretended not to notice. You learn a lot from angles where they turn their screens, how they tilt to hide. I knew the house would tell me the truth if I asked it in the right language records. Zinnia's voice cut through like the high pitch of a mosquito. First brunch at our beach place. She chirped her phone, balanced on a gimbal. The words burned more than the Texas heat. My embroidered apron flashed across her feed, tied tight around her sister's waist. Comments popped up so quickly, I couldn't read them all, but the caption was clear: "Our beach place." I didn't argue. Instead, I lifted my phone and caught her stream mirrored in the patio glass with the family-only sign in crisp view. A second photo framed the entire table. Darren, Callista, the cousin, the folded quilt tote at the side, the empty chair left for me, only in mockery. 2 taps, 2 timestamps. Signal was stronger near the patio slider. I stepped outside the gulls overhead, cutting across the live stream audio. I opened the app hit screen record and captured the live broadcast, complete with hearts and laughing emojis flying past. A small red dot blinked steady my witness. I saved the file, noted the start and stop times, and created a folder labeled S7 Livestream. Then, like grading homework, I wrote a quick line on an index card sourced time visible objects. The discipline of keeping track steadied my breath. From the kitchen, I heard Callista's voice, sharp enough to carry. "Don't scratch the owner's island." A cousin chuckled, repeating the word, "owner." The echo stung, but I didn't flinch. I slid my recorder on under the hum of the vent and the clink of plates. A 30-second snippet, nothing more, but the context mattered. Later, matched with the video, it would be a line in bold. I made a slow inventory of the room. Sunscreen streaked across the wicker arms. Cleat marks dotted the window seat. The geranium pot scuffed white still sagged in spilled soil. Not crimes, just carelessness. but together they told a story. I photographed each one from measured angles careful to match where last year's insurance inspector had stood. Album labeled, "Interior Condition Now." On my phone, I opened the insurer's app. There it was, the baseline inspection from last spring. Kitchen counters, gleaming living room, wicker unmarked patio boards freshly sealed. Each photo stamped with date and location. Relief rose in me, practical and quiet. I exported them labeled S15 before then paired them one by one with today's images under S15 after. I lined them up into neat grids. Kitchen before and after, living room before and after, patio deck before and after. I kept my shadow out of the frame, kept my commentary off the captions. The truth needed no adjectives. Each grid bore a short title. Kitchen Grid 01 Living, Grid 2 Patio Grid 3, dates, times, angles, done. Darren passed close behind me, glancing at the phone as the grids came together. His voice dipped uneasy. "Mom, can we not?" I turned just enough so the reflection still caught the family-only sign behind him. "I'm not arguing, Darren," I said evenly. "I'm recording." His mouth tightened, but he didn't push further. Silence can be as loud as a slammed door. I backed up every file to the cloud, double-checking the timestamps. I added a note, present parties, visible objects, angle references, chain of custody. If they rewrote the story in words, my pictures would answer back in ink and pixels. The dining room burst with laughter again, as if on cue, louder than the surf outside. I slipped into the hallway notebook in my palm. The closet door still hung ajar, that same manila folder peeking out tabs marked medical and notary winking under the dim light. I didn't touch it. Not yet. Some truths require patience to open. I exhaled, tucked the notebook into my bag, and walked toward the front. If their voices claimed ownership, then soon enough their paperwork would have to say it out loud. The closet door wasn't fully closed, and the edge of a manila folder whispered about doctors and ink. I took a photo of it exactly where it lay, timestamp glowing in the corner, then slid the folder out and carried it to the guest room dresser. My house, my hands, no hurry. The blinds threw pale stripes across the wood, and somewhere down the hall, a speaker skipped to the next song like nothing in the world was shifting. I set the folder, flat step back, and took a wide-shot dresser lamp, the chipped seashell dish my sister gave me years ago, so no one could say I'd staged anything. Close-ups next, the handwriting on sticky notes, the notches on the tab, a faint coffee ring on the manila. Into the phone, I spoke one calm line for myself, later date, time, location. Then I pulled a pair of thin food prep gloves from the pantry stash I keep for chopping jalapenos and snapped them on. Paper can carry more than words. It carries fingerprints, arguments, entire futures. I wasn't going to add mine. The first page slid free. Physician statement incapacity proposed. The word proposed steadied me. Pre-filled fields showed my full name and addressed the box for unable to manage personal or financial affairs neatly checked. A note scrawled in another hand read, expedite, and under it weekend access, and then more telling than a shout, no confrontation. I breathed out through my nose slow. A second document followed durable power of attorney agent Darren Kraft. Unexecuted. Lines for signatures blank as a winter sky. My son's name in a space reserved for someone you'd trust with the keys to your life. I photographed the headers, the margins, the notes. Tilting a page, I caught a groove where someone had pressed hard as they wrote. A person planning to erase you writes heavier than a person writing a grocery list. I placed the page aside and lifted the next. A printout, mobile notary, Saturday 10:00 a.m. A Houston number, a simple logo. A sticky clung to the corner, need ID, need doctor's letter. I took photos of front and back. The back bore the faint outline of a text, will be official owners once notary stamps. The words looked like a teenager bragging into a mirror. I'd heard that tone before once upon a time when Darren wanted a car he hadn't earned. Another clipped sheet showed screenshots of messages, time and date stamps crisp. She barely uses it, and this is better for everyone. That line, better for everyone, is what people say when everyone means us, not her. I documented each screenshot, then the clip itself, then the entire spread of papers on the dresser. The phone's shutter was the only sound I made. The hallway sighed as air shifted. Laughter floated, then faded, then the clink of glass on stone. I didn't flinch. I slid the documents back in order and stepped onto the porch outside the guest room to make a call where reception was clean. The community gatehouse answered on the second ring. Pelican Shores Gate, a woman said. Warm Texas in the vowels. Sable Ortiz speaking. Miss Ortiz, I said, this is Eleonora Shaw at Seawall Drive, homeowner. I need to confirm a visitor from this morning. Yes, ma'am. What time frame? Between 9 and 10, I said. Possibly a contractor. A vehicle with signage. Her keyboard clacked. License plate reader shows a sedan with a magnetic mobile notary sign entering at 9:52 a.m. 2 occupants. Do you want a still frame? Yes, I said. To my number, please? My phone buzzed within a minute. The still showed the car nose angled toward the camera, the magnet, a rectangle of certainty. I saved it to a folder labeled S18 Entry Cam. Thank you, Ms. Ortiz, I said. I may request the CSV log later. No trouble at all, she replied. We can prepare that with a written request. I'll send one, I said, and ended the call. Control is not about raising your voice. It's about gathering the right nouns. Back in the guest room, I took one last wide shot of the dresser and the open folder, then eased each page back into place in the exact sequence I'd found them. I slid a small index card under the stack, a pale breadcrumb for future me, dated and timed with 2 words photographed in situ. I photographed that, then the folder closed, then the closet shelf where it would return. Chain of custody is easier to explain when you can show your hands were careful. Footsteps skimmed the hallway, lifted voices passing like a front rolling over the gulf. Callista laughed short, satisfied. Then Darren's mumble apologetic enough to irritate me, not enough to stop anything. I stood against the jamb until they turned a corner, then slipped into the hall and put the folder back the beach tote, hiding its flap again as if the house itself were wincing. In the kitchen, the playlist jumped to an upbeat track. Someone said, "We'll need more ice," and a teenager answered on it. Everyday sentences braided themselves around a plan to move my life out from under me. I didn't introduce a single argument into the weave. Instead, I walked back to the guest room, locked my screen, and began a short list in my notebook. HOA audit logs. Gatehouse still secured. CSV to request by email. Clinic verification that I've never been examined by any doctor on these forms. Attorney consult, first thing Monday, bank capacity letter if needed. And to myself, a line in darker ink, do not confront in-house. It's not a surrender to walk away from a fire when you already have the footage of who lit it. I took photos from the closet down the hall to the front door path of intention. I labeled the files that mattered most for today, S4 for the incapacity draft and DPOA S18 for the entry camera. In the living room, another round of laughter rose and broke like a wave on the seawall. Outside, a tourist trolley bell dinged twice, cheerful and distant. The world goes on while your name is being penciled out. That's the trick of it. I wheeled my overnight bag back across the entry tile. The air smelled like sunscreen lemon cleaner and a whisper of barbecue smoke from someone's yard. I paused at the frame of the door, looked once at the family gathered around a table, set with place cards that didn't make room for me, and chose the kind of boundary you can hand to a judge. If the papers in my house were meant to take something, my records would hold it fast until I decided who, if anyone, deserved to touch it. On the front step, I sent a brief text to Miss Ortiz, thanking her for the still. I added a second to myself with the image attached, noting the time again. Then I rolled my bag to the curb where the breeze off the Gulf turned the heat into something that felt almost clean. I booked a cheap room by the seawall for the night. Strategy needs quiet. A plastic room key card is still a key. Walking to my car, I passed the small square of lawn I'd paid to reseed after last year's storm. Shoe prints mashed shallow crescents into the new grass. I took one more photo, not out of pettiness, out of habit. If they needed a notary to make me vanish, I would bring records that made me visible. I started the engine, let the air conditioning blow the humidity out, and backed away from my own driveway with the same care I used to take when Darren was a sleeping baby in the back seat, gentle, deliberate, protecting someone who didn't know what could hurt him. I checked the rear view. The house sat bright against the afternoon the porch chair angled, just as I'd left it months ago. Nothing had moved. Everything had. I drove toward the seawall where the water keeps its own counsel and the road runs straight. The plan was simple distance counsel documentation. No raised voices, no broken plates, no ugly scenes that give other people excuses. I had what I needed. Now I would use it. I rolled away from my house and drove the seawall until the water steadied my breath. A budget motel with outdoor stairs and salt on the rail was enough: a room, a desk, a door that answered only to me. In the lobby, I slid my ID under plexiglass and took a key card without small talk. The clerk tapped a map toward the stairs. My overnight bag felt lighter than what I carried that no one could see. The AC hummed when I opened the door. It smelled like soap and coffee. A square desk and a pull-chain lamp waited. The window held late sun over the seawall. I set my phone down and for 1 minute switched to airplane mode. In, out, I was tired, not broken. When the minute ended, I put the phone to work. I took out a clean spiral notebook meant for recipes. On page 1, I wrote Plain Owner's Log Beach House. Beneath it, I made an index today's date and 5 tabs, access seating livestream paperwork contacts. I taped the print of the keypad denial inside the cover and wrote 3 lines under it, address time temperature. No adjectives. Facts move. Page 2 became a grid, 2 columns, requests and sources. Row 1, HOA plate reader, CSV and Stills Community Office. Row 2, clinic verification, no exam by the named physician-patient portal. Row 3, bank letter affirming independent management branch and banker. Row 4, insurance baseline paired to new photos, account repository. Under each, I added artifacts, PDF voicemail headers, timestamps. I called the HOA before closing. "This is Eleonora Shaw at Seawall Drive," I said to the manager's voicemail. "Please preserve all access logs and plate reader data for today between 9 and 11 a.m. and the camera stills. I will submit a written request and pick up copies." I kept my voice, even logged the time, then emailed records preservation, access and plate reader. I included unit number and dates. The clinic portal greeted me with pastel buttons that try to make medicine less frightening. The calendar showed no visits this year. I took a screenshot and opened messages. "Please confirm in writing that I have never been examined by Dr. Seto Uchuar Siwadi at any time, and that no appointment is scheduled within 7 days. I sent it. The auto-reply stamped a ticket number and time. I wrote both in the log and left space for the answer. Paperwork is loud when honest. For the bank, I called my banker's direct line. "This is Eleonora. Please prepare a letter attesting to my independent management of accounts and consistent decision-making per our records. I would like to meet in person tomorrow morning. I'll bring ID." In the margin, I added the branch address, the time, and my list. Then I backed up the day twice. I moved the seating photos, the damage grid, the live stream, captured the gatehouse still, and the draft images into a cloud folder labeled S5 Motel Strategy. I created a mirrored folder named Redundancy and uploaded the same files. I wrote short descriptions under each source angle relevance. I opened one clip for 3 seconds to prove the upload worked. I wrote the final line for that section chain of custody personal collection. A soft knock came. Vera stood there with a paper bag and the look I know from church kitchens, practical kindness. "Chicken, noodle, and cornbread," she said, lifting the bag. "Salt and starch help more than speeches." We sat by the desk with the TV low and the ocean louder. She didn't ask for a story. I didn't offer one. We let simple things steady the room. After a few spoonfuls, I slid an index card toward her. "I'll need a ride to the bank at 8. She nodded, touching her keys to be sure they were there. She set a small envelope beside my notebook. The handwriting on the front was tidy. Inside, "We remember who we are when others forget." I read it twice, then taped it to the inside cover opposite the keypad photo. Hope facing proof. 2 pages making a hinge that held. Evening drifted without news. The ice machine knocked like an old engine in the wall. A child laughed down the hall. A door thumped and reopened. I folded the paper bag and set it by the trash so the room would be clean for morning. When the sun slid out, I laid out tomorrow's clothes slacks that don't wrinkle a cotton blouse low shoes. I set 2 alarms 5 minutes apart and set the charger where it wouldn't trip me at dawn. On a fresh index card, I wrote 1 promise records before confrontations. I tucked it into the log. Boundaries are easier to keep when you can touch them. I texted Vera our morning plan and added the bank address so it would map quickly. Then I scrolled my owner's log to see if anything felt loose. The grid held. The requests were clear. The plan didn't require anyone to behave better than they had. It only required me to keep behaving like myself. I turned off the lamp and lay back. The ocean spoke through the unit like an old friend. I didn't rehearse speeches or stage scenes. I counted Morning Steps HOA office at 7:45 with a list and the patience of a woman who pays every bill on time. Clinic letter, banker at 8:30, index cards stacked in order. Sleep came as if it had waited outside the door for me to finish the count. If strategy begins in a quiet room, it continues where devices keep the truth. In the morning, my phone and I would carry paper to the places that must answer. The door at my house may not know me. These offices will because I asked the right way. I slept well. At 7:55 a.m., I walked into the HOA office with a folder under my arm and sleep steadying my back. The lobby lights were bright in the public building way. No corners, no secrets. A receptionist flipped the open placard and asked for the unit number. I gave it and my ID. I left a voicemail and an email yesterday, I said. This is a records preservation request. I photographed the wall directory with the time showing and put my phone away. A woman in a navy blazer stepped from a glass office Astria Monroe property manager. We sat at a small table. I slid a 1-page checklist and a thumb drive. Gate camera stills for yesterday and this morning, I said. Plate reader CSV 9 to 11 and any smart lock change history if the vendor keeps it. She read once, nodded, and said she'd email prelims before noon. The gatehouse was a small booth with sun-faded flags above it. Sable Ortiz, the guard I'd spoken to, greeted me like someone who knows where the rules live. Ms. Shaw, she said, let's pull the timeline. On her monitor, 9:52 a.m. yesterday, a sedan with a door magnet, mobile notary, rolled past the camera. She exported a still and printed a header with hash values and camera ID. You'll also get a secure link, she said. I noted the hash string in my owner's log under S18 S6. Plate reader next yes. The report built on screen plates, timestamps, laying a small map. 3 unfamiliar plates repeated within 2 hours. Sable added a note, temporary vendor code used at pedestrian gate at 10:07 a.m. She printed the CSV and the note then slid me a receipt listing items provided. Sign and I'll add my badge number. I initialed. She wrote it beside her name. No drama, just ink. I carried the stack to the corner cafe because evidence reads straighter beside coffee. I didn't open a laptop. I opened my binder. Each page got a pencil label and 3 lines. What the still proves, what the CSV suggests, what neither shows without context. I photographed the receipt and emailed it to myself, along with the secure link Sable sent. Redundancy calms the hands. By 9:30, I was at the bank where I've renewed CDs longer than some tellers have been alive. Alex Peterson waved me into the glass nook. ID, as usual, he asked. I handed it over and set my folder on the table. I need a letter, I said, stating the length of our relationship, that I manage my accounts independently, that my decisions are timely and consistent, and that you've seen nothing suggesting otherwise. He read back proposed language a few minutes later. Tenure of the relationship, patterns of consistent self-directed transactions, clear understanding in all interactions, confirmation of sole authority, willingness to appear if subpoenaed. The plainness was a balm. Ink signed original on letterhead, I said, and a PDF emailed from your bank address while I'm here. He nodded and stepped out to print. While I waited, I added SMS alerts for large transfers and a note on file: any third-party power of attorney must be verified with me in person at this branch. Alex returned and entered the note while I watched, then slid a memo for my initials. I signed and added today's date. Precautions tell the future who is in charge. He came back with the letter in a clear sleeve, his signature centered. He sent the PDF to my email while I watched it arrive. "Do you want a sealed copy for counsel?" he asked. "Yes." He handed an envelope with the bank crest. I logged the time and wrote S20 bank capacity letter on the tab. Outside, Seawin lifted the envelope corner and tapped it against my wrist. I stacked what the morning had given the gate still with hash, the CSV with the vendor code note, the signed bank letter, new alerts and the memo requiring in-person verification. Institutions don't blink. People do. I texted Darren I'll stop by at noon, unlocked the door. I looped back to the HOA. Astria met me with a manila envelope. Prelim stills and the CSV, she said. Vendor is checking on lock logs. I have my records, I said, thinking of a keypad that had denied me. She nodded. We were not friends. We were adults. On the cafe patio, I checked the envelope against my list and wrote complete beside today's items. I photographed the stack and uploaded it to the same redundant folders as last night. Saturday rose bikes, a dog, a child bargaining for pancakes. My phone buzzed, the clinic portal replied. We have no record of any examination by Dr. D. Chuiswarth. ECB Sakirn for patient Eleonora Shaw. No appointment is scheduled. I screenshotted the message with the ticket number and filed it behind S4. At 11:55, I stood on my front walk with my folder and the wind in my hair. I thought of the line I'd written records before confrontations and felt how it held. I was not here to argue. I was here to set the record on the table and ask my son to read. The keypad blinked like any machine with no skin in the game. I pressed the bell. Through the glass, a shadow crossed the hall, then my son's shoulders. He opened the door a fraction, then wider. I put my keys into his palm before my words did. Noon, I said, as promised. He stepped aside. The house smelled like coffee and lemon cleaner. Callista. He called toward the kitchen, caution in his tone. I didn't move past the threshold. I'm not here to fight, I said even. I'm here so you can see what I have. I raised the sleeve with the bank letter and the gatehouse still behind it. There are rooms where love is the only language that counts. Today was not that room. At 11:59, I stood again on my own porch. The Texas sun pressed straight down shadows drawn short against the steps. I texted Darren, I'm here. A pause. The bolt clicked, the door eased open the width of his palm. He stood there, broad shoulders bent like he was bracing. I held the HOA envelope and the clear sleeve with the bank's letter at my side. They weren't weapons, they were facts. Open it, I said. He hesitated. Callista's outline appeared behind him, arms already crossed. 2 minutes, I added, not raising my voice. Darren slid the bolt, the hinge creaked. I thumbed an audio memo on my phone, time-stamped, and stepped across the line only when the way was clear. Inside, the same mess from yesterday, towels on wicker cleats on the window seat, my quilt folded tight into a plastic tote. I didn't comment. I'm here to correct the record, I said. Callista folded her arms tighter. I set the sleeve down on the console, flat and untouched. We will speak in facts. You can't lock me out of my own home. I began, tone even. Here's what the HOA produced since last night. I slid forward the still photo of the sedan with the mobile notary magnet time-stamped 9:52 a.m., then the CSV list of unfamiliar plates. I didn't hand them over. I placed them where they could see, not twist. Zinnia's phone buzzed. She glanced down. On her screen popped the family chat thread someone had screenshotted her sister's words. Once we get the notary stamp, she's just a guest. The reflection of her screen caught in the patio glass. I raised my phone, captured it clean. Time-stamped. Thank you, I said softly to no one in particular. You misunderstood, Callista shot back. That wasn't, I raised a finger not to silence but to cut spin from fact. I'm not here for interpretations, only records. I read aloud from the HOA header time location digital hash, my voice steady, the audio bar glowing red. Callista's chin lifted. We have papers, too. Her bluff was air, and I let it hang before setting down the signed bank letter, fresh ink from this morning. This affirms my financial independence and capacity. Here's the clinic ticket number confirming no exam by the physician you named. I slid a short list gate stills, CSV bank letter pending clinic reply. These are mine. Where are yours? Darren's eyes flicked between us. He could have spoken, but he didn't. His silence weighed heavier than her words. You brought a notary yesterday, I said. Not a question. He exhaled. No answer. I placed the HOA still beside the family chat screenshot. Your timeline conflicts with your story. Through the screen door, Arthur Vale paused with his terrier. He didn't come closer, but he was visible steady. I didn't need him to speak. I only needed them to know a witness stood in daylight. We're done pretending this is confusion, I said. You have until tomorrow morning to clear out, I stated, voice clean, not raised. If the notary returns, it will be to read the order you forced me to file. I gathered the pages back into their sleeve, the snap of plastic louder than any argument. At the door, I added, if you have legitimate papers, show them to my attorney, not to my furniture. I stepped into the noon light, the salt air cool against my skin. On the walk, I texted Darren one more line, Attorney Deepa Kanso office address attached. No emojis, no lectures. By Monday morning, I wanted the kind of knock that didn't care who smiled at it. The sun was climbing when I pulled into the courthouse lot, early risers sliding through security. Belt-off keys in the tray, the deputy said. I laid my folder on the conveyor, breathed through the arch, and took a number at the civil filings window. The clerk looked up when I set my stack down. Deed copy, HOA stills, and CSV insurance grids. Bank letter photo index, my sworn declaration. She slid me a checklist. I initialed each box property address exhibit's contact numbers. Raise your right hand. She said no ceremony. I did. The oath was a handful of sentences that the statements were true, the documents mine to submit that I understood the penalty for lying. My voice stayed level. When she finished, the stamper thumped my receipt. I'm requesting expedited review for a temporary restraining order and immediate possession, I said. Occupants are not on the deed. She nodded, flagged the top page, and wrote a note for the duty judge. You'll get a text when a cause number is assigned. I thanked her by name and entered the time in my owner's log. By 9:30, I sat in Thomas Gallagher's office, a downtown suite that smelled faintly of toner and leather. He leaves his diplomas a little crooked, so clients look at forms instead. I slid the filing receipt across. He tightened the language and added proposed orders to speed the judge. Behind a tabbed binder, he lined up my exhibits. S4, the draft that tried to label me incapacitated. S6, the gatehouse stills and plate reader list. S7, live stream frames. S15, insurance before-after. S20, the bank. At 9:51, my phone buzzed. The clerk's text arrived plain as a street sign, cause number assigned. Hearing penciled for Wednesday morning. TRO under review today. Thomas printed the docket and handed me a red sleeve. I wrote S11 across the top and the exact minute received. Vindication isn't fireworks. It's a line of black ink that doesn't flinch. We drove to the police substation, a low building with a flag snapping in the breeze. Inside, coffee and copy paper. Deputy Lane met us at a side counter. Sleeves rolled courteous without sugar. This is civil, he said. But if a TRO is signed, we can serve notice and do a standby while belongings are removed. He walked me through the steps like a recipe, provide copies, list residents by legal name, specify time windows. No nicknames. I gave him the packet and my contact list. He logged the address. Back at Thomas's, we assembled the service packet on a clean table filing receipt, proposed order exhibit index return of service, pre-filled with the house address and copies of photographs that would keep anyone from pretending confusion. He handed me a manila envelope and a small stack of spare forms. If the judge signs this afternoon, he said Lane's unit can take it from here. 2 sentences are plenty if you're present. I stepped into the hall to send the line I had promised myself I'd send without heat. Court filings initiated. Lawful service may occur today. I sent it first to Darren, then to Callista. Red receipts lit gray, then blue. That was enough. I forwarded the filing receipt to my own email and added S12 in the margin of my log, notice delivered. At 10:40, Arthur texted, "If you need a statement, I'll stop by after work." I called to be sure he wasn't feeling pushed. "No, ma'am," he said. "What I heard, I heard." Thomas drafted a 1-page declaration in plain English time of day, what was shouted, what he observed. We set 6 p.m. for his signature. I logged it as S13 neighbor statement. Noon found me parked at the curb across from my porch, not in the driveway that had been treated like a stage. I kept my hands on the wheel, the air conditioning low, my phone on the console. The house looked busy in small ways, a towel draped on the rail, laughter from the deck music too loud for lunch. I did not walk up. I wrote one line in my notebook, "Let the paper speak first." Then I emailed Lane and Thomas my location and said I would be available for a standby if service happened. Time can crawl even when you agree with it. A gull skimmed the bright air. A delivery truck idled, hissed, moved on. I rehearsed the only words I would allow myself at the moment of contact. "You are being served. Please step aside." I didn't practice variations. The point of the law on its best days is to strip away performance. At 1:30, my phone pinged again. Thomas forwarded a scanned page, the judge's initials in a dark corner, and a space for the clerk to enter signature time later. "Stand by," he wrote. "Clerk expects a decision before 5. Lane has your number." I put the phone face down and looked at my front door, the same door where Darren had opened 2 inches and Hope had tried to squeeze through. The ache rose and fell like tidewater under a pier. I thought of Vera's card taped opposite the keypad photo. "We remember who we are when others forget." I am a woman who paid every bill on time, who knows the difference between anger and action, who can write a grid that outlasts a rumor. If they had opened the door for a car with a magnet last weekend, they could open it for a badge this afternoon. And if they didn't, ink would open it for them. The sun leaned west. I turned the key, let the engine idle, and waited for the knock that would not smile, not flinch, not argue, only deliver. The cruiser slid in behind my sedan just as the sun tipped past the palms. I stepped out with my owner's log and the clear sleeve of exhibits. Deputy Lane checked my license, matched the name to the filing packet, and kept his voice even. "You'll stand 3 steps back once the door opens. I'll read the papers. You record your times." It sounded like a kitchen recipe, simple, exact. I uncapped my pen and wrote the minute on the hood. He climbed the steps and knocked once, courthouse firm, not angry. A pause, then the deadbolt scraped. Darren opened to the chain. Lane introduced himself, gave the address, and asked for the door to be unlatched. When the chain fell, Lane began reading line by line the notice that carried the judge's initials. Property address, immediate lawful access for the owner, temporary restraint against interference. I watched his mouth shape each clause, not to savor it, but to make sure the syllables landed. Callista appeared behind Darren, jaw tight. I wrote the time the first copy touched Darren's hand and the time the second went to her. "Step aside, please," Lane said. It wasn't a question. We crossed the threshold. The air inside was the same as Saturday's sunscreen lemon cleaner, the thin smell of worry. "We are here for a civil standby," Lane announced. "We're not here to arbitrate feelings. We're here to keep the peace while orders are followed." I set my clear sleeve on the console where I had set it before. "I won't touch your personal bags," I said. "Only my property." Lane started the clock with a tap of his watch. 2 hours. Personal effects only. No removal of the owner's furnishings, appliances, or labeled items. His tone made it a curb, not a suggestion. I fetched flattened boxes from the hall closet and laid painter's tape and markers on the dining table. "Label everything I said. We'll sign a receipt for what you take." He nodded once, approving the ground rules. I turned the table into an inventory station. A grid sheet for each room, item, status note. S16 began with the list I had built in quieter hours. Pearl earrings, my husband's gold watch, the silver coin tube from his desk-embroidered guest towels. I paired each line with the before photos and slid them into view one at a time. The photos didn't raise their voice. They didn't need to. The towels were old. Callista said, chin tilted toward the laundry basket. Lane didn't change expression. Old or new, not yours. I kept my eyes on the grid and pointed to the insurance photo that showed the monogram shining in better light. Lane initialed the line and wrote located, returned, pending. I marked the minute. Darren's mouth pressed flat the way it did when he'd lost a Little League game and wanted to act older than he was. A shadow crossed the doorway. Arthur stood outside, the screenwork shirt still dusty. He didn't wave or step in. Lane glanced over, then made a note on his standby log and asked Arthur for his full name. Witnesses make rooms honest without saying a word. I wrote the time of his arrival and returned to the grid. At the 30-minute mark, a white SUV glided up and an HOA badge flashed at the porch. Astria Monroe greeted Lane by title and Callista by last name. She handed over a printed notice, unauthorized occupancy noise after posted quiet hours trash violation, fees assessed and due. Lane didn't read the amounts aloud. He wasn't here for that. I stepped to the door frame and photographed the header and date. You can direct questions to the office, Astria said, and left as quickly as she came. The paper went into a tote. The consequence stayed in the room. Drawers opened, zippers rasped. A toddler cried, then quieted. From a suitcase that didn't belong to this house, a small zippered pouch emerged. Callista held it for a beat as if thinking of a different choice, then set it down. Inside lay my pearl earrings and the watch with the nicked bezel my husband earned the first week he wore it. The coins clinked in a plastic bag. Lane positioned the pouch on the table and had me compare each piece to its photo. Match, I said. He wrote returned, and we both signed the property receipt. I did not thank and I did not scold. Gratitude belongs to gifts. This was restitution. Packing looks messy, even when it's organized. Toys found a box. Shoes were paired. Wet towels went to the washer, not the trunk. I slid a sealed pack of water bottles across the floor without speech. Compassion offered like a spare flashlight, useful, not sentimental. Thank you, one of the kids murmured to no one in particular. I nodded and returned to the grid. 60 minutes, Lane announced. Darren asked for another hour. Lane kept the same tone. The order says 2. We'll use 2. The house settled around the math. I walked with Lane through each room, not to hover, but to confirm edges. Bedroom clear. Bathroom free of my towels and guest soaps. Kitchen counters wiped my apron back on its hook, my quilt rescued from the plastic tote and refolded the way my hands remember. On the dining table, my owner's log kept its breathing. I wrote the make and color of each vehicle parked at the curb, not because I wanted to keep score, but because records catch what feelings miss. When Callista reached for a lamp, Lane shook his head. Fixture. She pivoted to a stack of plates. Owners, I said softly and pointed to the purchase photo. She packed her mugs instead. 10 minutes, Lane called. The last box thudded shut. Darren stood with his palm on it, eyes somewhere that wasn't here. You're not barred from seeing the children, I said, voice level, but you are barred from this house without my consent. He swallowed, and for a second I saw the boy who scraped his knee on the church steps and refused a bandage because he wanted to walk into service without a fuss. Then he was a man again, and the box was heavy. Arthur stepped back as the doors opened and the boxes moved to the driveway. Trunk lids lifted and slammed. The noise sounded like a set change more than a goodbye. Lane watched the last tote slide into place and clicked his pen. Civil standby complete, he said. He handed Darren a copy of the return of service and kept one for the file. I locked the door gently and called the locksmith from the front step, the same number I had placed in my notebook 2 nights earlier. First thing tomorrow, I told him. New cylinders, new admin code audit trail turned on. We'll be there at 8, he said. I wrote it down. Inside order returned like a tide that knows the coastline by heart. I stood in the living room and let my eyes take in what was here and what wasn't. The house didn't gloat. Neither did I. I lifted my sleeve of papers, slid them into the log, and noted the time the cruiser pulled away. The rooms felt like rooms again, not a stage. I walked to the console and straightened the photo of my wedding that had been face down. In the glass, I could see a woman who had chosen ink over noise and won't apologize for the choice. There was still a hearing ahead. Wednesday would have its own edges and announcements. But the air moved cleanly through the house, and the quiet had the right kind of weight. I turned off the music someone else had chosen, set the thermostat back to where I keep it, and wrote the final line of the day in my log paper, opened what people tried to close. The hallway outside 3B smelled faintly of lemon polish and old paper. Our cause number glowed on the digital board, the sort of light that doesn't flicker even when your stomach does. I set my palm flat on the owner's log to slow my pulse. Thomas Gallagher arrived with the efficient nod of a man who keeps his clock set 5 minutes fast. Facts first, I said. Only facts, he answered, and we stood in the narrow quiet that comes before a door opens and names are called. I counted breaths, 4 and 6, out the way my doctor suggested after my husband died. It still works in courthouse hallways. On the bench, we rehearsed nothing dramatic. He ran a finger down the exhibit tabs. Deed taxes, HOA still and CSV bank capacity, letter live stream grids, inventory receipts, HOA violation, a blue line under the clinic ticket number like a vein, foundation capacity access timeline, he murmured, and motive only if asked. I took one breath for every floor tile between us and the courtroom door. Cause number. The clerk's voice reached us and we rose. Judge Sandoval's robe moved without hurry. She confirmed appearances. Thomas gave his, then stepped aside. Owner, I said when my turn came. Callista said family like the word might grow arms and claim a house. Darren shifted eyes low. Brief statements, not stories, the judge said. We are here for orders. Good. Thomas began with foundation, deed copy tax receipts, HOA records. The court marked them each sticker a small flag that meant seen. The bank letter came next. He read the header line about tenure of relationship and staff observations of my clarity. Admitted. Gate still and plate reader CSV with the hash header voiced into the microphone. Admitted. The judge glanced at a page from Chambers and spoke for the record filings were timely. Temporary orders looked appropriate pending rebuttal. My shoulders dropped a half-inch. The bench had noticed the difference between noise and proof. Midway through, my phone pulsed once in my bag. I slid it toward Thomas. The clinic portal had answered, no examination on record. Doctor has not seen patient. The judge permitted supplementation. Thomas used the court's small printer, tendered the email with headers, and the clerk clipped it to the stack. The paper was cool when I touched it. Then came the story they wanted to tell. We were trying to protect her. Callista said, voice dressed in concern. Mom forgets things. Darren offered eyes on a point over my left shoulder. Thomas didn't raise his voice. He pointed to the CSV timestamp where a sedan with a mobile notary magnet crossed the gate before any alleged confusion. Intent follows action, he said. Here action came first. Cross felt like a clean breeze after a humid week. Mrs. Crawford Thomas said, your bank certifies capacity. The clinic denies any exam. Your chat refers to her as a guest after the notary. Which part of this is caregiving silence held? Then he added, Your Honor. The only incapacity in this record is of conscience, not cognition. Zinnia's leaked chat printout lay on counsel table like a mirror none of them wanted to stand in front of. Judge Sandoval's questions were narrow surgical. Mr. Kraft, did you invite a notary to this property? Darren's throat clicked. Yes. Did your mother consent a beat? No. No gavel fell. It didn't need to. The room understood the sound of a door closing without a slam. Findings came in sentences that held. Immediate possession confirmed to the owner. No interference with access. No contact order as to harassment on premises. Return of listed items verified. Costs assessed against respondents. A separate hearing on damages reserved. The pen moved. The clerk stamped. Ink made the same shape here that it makes on every page, and still it felt different when it was for me. I finally breathed. In the hallway, the world came back in scuffs and murmurs. Thomas gathered conformed copies while I initialed the service acknowledgement. Arthur appeared in his work shirt cap in hand long enough to sign the short declaration he had promised. I ran my finger along the raised seal the way I might test a quilt seam for straightness. The edge held. Darren stepped close, careful as if the air might bruise. "Mom, can we talk?" I met his eyes. About the children always. About the house through counsel. I didn't step back. I didn't step closer. Boundaries live in inches. On the stone steps, the heat rose from the granite in soft waves. I called the locksmith to confirm tomorrow's 8 a.m., then the cleaning crew for a walkthrough and my insurer to schedule an adjuster. Thomas checked his watch and said he'd courier a certified copy to the bank for their file. I held the order up to the wind for a second. It didn't flap. Paper has weight when it's earned. I took that as a sign to go home. We walked to the curb, not like victors, but like people who had carried heavy bags to the right counter and set them down in the correct order. "You did exactly what you said you would," Thomas said. Records before confrontations, I answered, and slid the conformed copy into my log. There would be repairs and locksmith clicks, and a silence the house might not recognize at first, but the bench had seen through smoke. The day's ink would teach the rooms their grammar again, what belongs, what doesn't, and how to keep it without shouting. The order rode home on the passenger seat like a steady friend. By afternoon, a white van with a ladder eased to the curb. Ms. Shaw, the locksmith, asked through the screen. I showed him the stamped paper and my license. 15 minutes later, the old deadbolt sat in a canvas bag and a new cylinder turned, where strangers had pressed their luck. We rekeyed the side door, the slider, and the low garage latch people forget until it matters. I signed the work order. The click of each test told my shoulders to settle. The insurance adjuster arrived as the sea breeze shouldered into the living room. He wore soft-soled shoes. We walked slow and factual window seat, scuffed wicker, streaked a chip in the pantry tile. He photographed each corner, then nodded at the table where I'd laid out the before-after grids I built over the weekend. Good angles, he said, tapping a caption, date, time match. I didn't explain why people my age document things. Memory is not a courtroom. After he left, I ran the washer with the good towels, the ones my mother stitched with my initials before her hands shook. I pressed my apron and set it back on its hook, then counted the china like a teacher at the end of a bake sale. 12 plates, 11 saucers, 1 hairline crack. I logged without drama. From the high shelf, I brought out the velvet pouch, pearls accounted for, clasped tight. My husband's gold watch lay beside them, ticking like a steady tide. The coin tube clinked once, and I smiled a small, private smile you can only earn. My phone buzzed with a sting older than the ringtone. A family friend had posted that I was confused, and my saintly daughter-in-law had been managing things. A cousin amplified it. I did not write the reply that burned my throat. I set today's newspaper on the table where the sunlight hit, placed the upper corner of the signed order beside the date, and took a single clear photo. No caption, no arrows, no heat. Proof doesn't shout. It stands still. Arthur's voice carried from the fence like a ball game on AM radio. I signed the declaration, he said, resting his forearms on the cedar pickets. Truth reads plain if folks let it. I brought him the pie plate he'd loaned me and a thank you. He shrugged the way neighbors do when decency is just Tuesday. Holler if you need anything, he said, and whistled his terrier home. Thomas called after 5 the way attorneys do, when courthouse lights are down, but work isn't. Prosecutor referral is active, he said. The clinic denial closed the loop. There may be a falsification inquiry. I sat at the kitchen table where I'd taught Darren to balance a checkbook. Forward the chat printouts and the clinic headers, I said. Chain of custody intact. Intact, he answered. Temporary order is live across systems. Patrol will see it. When the house went quiet again, I pulled a sheet of paper and started a letter to my son. I I wrote about the kids' swim schedules, about birthdays and boundaries, about Thanksgiving and who carves the turkey when the person with the sharpest knife shouldn't be trusted with the table. I wrote that I loved him, which is not the same as trusting him, and that love would wait at the curb until trust came home with a seatbelt on. Then I slid the letter into a folder labeled, "When he is ready." I drove for porch bulbs and a bit of wood filler for the nick by the pantry. On the way back, I stopped at the church thrift with a sack of extra linens, plain ones, not the embroidered because making room is easier when you give something away. Under the awning, a teenage volunteer waved me forward and called me ma'am without a smirk. I stood in that patch of shade and let my shoulders drop. Healing likes ordinary light. Near sunset, Thomas called again to confirm the paper's momentum. Temporary order logged where it needed to be hearing. On damages, set clerk's email. Archived. Sleep, he said. You've done enough for one day. I penciled each item into the log one clean line per step, then watered the geranium that had survived more than it should have, and still chose red blooms. Dusk drew a soft line along the seawall. I unlocked the deck door and stepped into air that smelled like lemon oil and salt. The rooms breathed properly again. I set the new keys in a ceramic scallop dish and touched the door frame I painted 20 years ago the day we moved in with boxes marked kitchen and a cooler of sandwiches. We are back, I told the frame and myself, and whatever listens when the noise has been escorted out. My phone buzzed again. Another post, more performance. I looked, and then I didn't. I will not argue on screens with people who would not sweep my floor if I fell. The line I won't cross is the one that would make me like them. I set the phone to Do Not Disturb and left it on the counter. The porch bulb glowed steady. From the fence, Arthur's latch clicked. Somewhere, a kid on a skateboard thumped past a sound that belongs to any town near a beach. I washed the last coffee cup, dried it, and put it away in the same cabinet I've used since my hair was mostly brown. Relief, brief anger resolve, and something like tenderness braided into a rope I could hold. Tomorrow would bring estimates and a number I would not argue about. Consequence is arithmetic. Forgiveness is not. Tonight was for lemon oil, a dish of keys, and a house that would sleep without strangers. I turned the final lock twice and let the clicks tell me what the court already had. This place remembers me, and I remember it. 2 weeks passed before the house began to feel like it was breathing with me again. Morning light stretched across the kitchen counter, soft as a promise. I brewed coffee and set the mug beside my owner's log, every page signed off, every line closed. A yellow sticky note sat on top my own handwriting boundary holds. I locked the safe, slid the log into its drawer, and turned toward the window. The Gulf was calm that morning, and so was I. Arthur came by not long after a folded newspaper in his hand. He placed it on my gate and gave me a small wave. The headline read, "Elder Property Fraud Attempt Halted in Court." I didn't need to read the details, I knew them, but the comments told another story. Neighbors who once only nodded now wrote things like, "Proud she stood firm," and "That's how you do it." I clipped the page, filed it in my log, and made no speech. Truth doesn't need a podium. Later that morning, the courthouse clerk called. Her voice was brisk but kind. "Your compliance confirmation has been filed. No contact order remains active, and the HOA fines were paid." I underlined the docket number twice in my log. It was the sound of doors closing on lies that had tried to live here. By afternoon, Thomas called. His tone was steady, lawyerly, but I caught the hint of relief in it. The prosecutor's office issued a plea notice. Community service fines restitution documented. The clinic matter may spin off into its own case. I thanked him and told him to send my one-page impact statement. No anger in it, no venom, just my story in plain words. That night, I finally wrote the letter I'd been carrying in my chest. It wasn't long, 3 paragraphs to Darren. I wrote about holidays scheduled in advance visits with the children at neutral places, and the line I could never let blur again. This house was mine, not theirs. I mailed it certified the next morning. Hope doesn't hang on chances, it rests on boundaries with signatures. Life bent back into ordinary shapes. At the community center, I carried my old sewing machine to a circle of women, patching quilts for the shelter. My hands moved through fabric like they always had, steady and useful. Keeping what is good sometimes means giving it away. One evening, my phone chimed with Darren's number. His voicemail was halting pauses, air, and then a quiet apology. No excuses, just a crack in his voice. I saved it not to play back, but to hold like proof that even silence can change shape. My reply was simple. About the children, yes. About the house, through counsel. Love can sit on a welcome mat, but the lock stays turned. Neighbors treated me differently now. At the church hall, a woman clasped my hand. You showed us all how to stand. I didn't need to answer. I just changed the porch bulbs I'd bought warm white, softer than before. The restitution log closed at last. The insurer's check matched my grids. I wrote settled across the final page, then slipped my pearl earrings into a small velvet pouch, labeled, "For the girls when they're grown." Legacy doesn't erase damage, it builds around it. That evening, I stepped onto the deck. The surf moved steady salt in the air, lemon oil lingering from the polish I'd used earlier. I tested the new lock once more, listening to its hum. Not a barricade, not a punishment, just proof. I touched the doorframe I'd painted years ago and whispered, "We're not a secret and we're not a prize. We're a promise." The Gulf answered with its rhythm, endless and familiar. And so did I. I'm the mother in this story, and here's what I learned. Boundaries aren't cruelty. They're love with a backbone. Keep records, ask for help, and let institutions do what arguments can't. Dignity grows when you choose facts over fury, mercy over noise and hope, with the door locked and the welcome mat out. If your family is messy, you're not alone. What line do you need to draw, and what promise will you keep to yourself? If this touched you, comment 1, or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't, say why. And if you want more true human stories like this, please subscribe to the channel.